The waters of Caloris Prime turned dark as Captain Lyra Voss watched her fleet burn. Her ships floated like dead fish in the black ocean of space, their blue hulls cracked and leaking atmosphere. The Zephrin attack ships moved between them like hungry sharks picking off escape pods with their red laser beams. Lyra pressed her webbed hand against the command console of her flagship, the Coral Dream. The ship shook as another enemy blast hit their failing shields. Around her, the bridge crew worked with desperate calm. They were Colorians, sea people who had evolved from gentle ocean creatures. War was not in their nature, but today they had no choice. "Captain, we have lost contact with the fleet," said Commander Naya Corwin, her voice steady despite the fear in her large dark eyes. "Only 7 ships remain out of 43. Lyra closed her eyes and felt the weight of failure. The Colorian Republic had 6 beautiful water worlds, home to billions of peaceful beings who lived in harmony with their oceans. They had never hurt anyone. They had never wanted to fight. But the Zephyrins did not care about peace. The enemy had come from the desert worlds beyond the rim. They were creatures of rock and crystal, born under burning suns where only the strong survived. The Zephyrins lived to conquer. They took worlds and stripped them bare, enslaving any survivors. They had already destroyed 3 Colorian colonies, turning ocean worlds into dead rocks. "Set course for home," Lyra ordered. "All remaining ships, retreat to Caloris Prime." The journey home took 6 days. Lyra spent those days sending messages to her government, preparing them for the worst news. The Colorian defense fleet was finished. In 3 battles, the Zephyrins had crushed every ship they could field. The enemy would come for their homeworld next, and there was nothing left to stop them. Caloris Prime was the most beautiful world in the galaxy. Its vast oceans were home to coral cities that glowed with soft light. The Colorians had built their civilization without harming their planet. They grew their buildings from living coral, powered their cities with tidal energy, and healed their sick with medicines made from sea plants. Their technology was advanced, but it was built for life, not death. Elder Naya Corwin, the commander's sister and a member of the High Council, met Lyra at the spaceport. The city around them was full of refugees from the outer colonies. Colorian. Families had fled the advancing enemy, carrying only what they could save. Children with silvery scales and gill slits played in the shallow pools, not understanding that their world was ending. "The council has been debating for 3 days," Elder Corwin said as they walked through the coral halls of government. "Some want to surrender. They think the Zephyrins might show mercy if we give up without a fight." Lyra made a bitter sound. "Have they seen the reports from Aqua 7? The Zephyrins turned that world into a slave mining operation. They drained the oceans and forced our people to dig in the mud until they died." Elder Corwin nodded sadly. "Others want to evacuate. They say we should load as many people as possible onto ships and flee to unknown space. Start over somewhere else." "With what ships?" Lyra asked. "We lost most of our fleet. What we have left could not carry even 1% of our population." They reached the council chambers, where 12 Colorian elders sat in a circle around a pool of sacred water. These were the wisest leaders of their people, but today they looked old and defeated. They had lived their entire lives in peace, and they did not know how to fight a war. "Captain Voss," said the eldest, Ancient Yara, "Deep Current, tell us truly, can we defend our homeworld?" Lyra stood before them and spoke the hard truth. "No, Ancient One. The Zephyrin fleet is too strong. Their ships have thick armor and powerful shields. Their weapons can destroy our largest vessels. With a few shots, we have medical technology, environmental controls, and peaceful sciences. But we have no weapons that can hurt them." The council fell silent. Some members looked at their hands. Others stared into the sacred pool as if searching for answers in the water. "Then we are finished," said Elder Kale Tidecrest. "Our children will grow up as slaves if they grow up at all." "There is one last option," Elder Corwin said. She stood and walked to the center of the circle. "We could send out a distress signal, a call for help to any civilization that might answer." Ancient Yara shook her head. "We have asked the Galactic Federation for help. They say they cannot interfere in local conflicts. The other peaceful races have their own problems. No one wants to anger the Zephyrins." I'm not talking about the known galaxy, Elder Corwin said. We could send a deep space beacon, broadcast it in all directions beyond our local cluster. Perhaps there are other civilizations out there. Maybe someone will help us. The idea was desperate, but they had no other choice. For 2 days, the council debated the message. What could they offer in return for help? The Colorians were not a rich people by galactic standards. They had no rare metals or energy sources that others wanted. But they did have knowledge. Dr. Yala Tidecrest, the planet's greatest scientist, worked with the council to prepare the offer. The Colorians had mastered biological healing. They could restore damaged ecosystems, cure genetic diseases, and extend the life of any carbon-based creature. They also knew how to generate unlimited clean energy from tidal forces and had mapped several star systems rich in rare minerals that other races had not yet found. The message was simple and honest. Elder Corwin recorded it herself, standing before the great coral gardens of their capital city. Behind her, Colorian children played in the warm pools while their parents watched with worried eyes. To any civilization capable of military aid, we are the Colorian Republic of 6 ocean worlds. We are a peaceful people under attack by the Zephrin Empire. They have destroyed 3 of our colonies and enslaved our people. Their fleet approaches our homeworld and we cannot stop them. We offer our greatest treasures to anyone who will help us. We know the secrets of biological restoration, unlimited clean energy, and the location of rare mineral deposits worth more than entire solar systems. Please, we are dying. Our children sing no more in the coral cities. The beacon was launched on a Tuesday morning when the tide was high. It carried the message in 47 different languages and broadcast on frequencies that would reach across the galaxy. Then they waited. Days passed with no answer. A week went by in silence. The Zephrin fleet was detected at the edge of their solar system, moving slowly but steadily toward Caloris Prime. The enemy was in no hurry. They knew the Colorians could not fight back. Other civilizations did respond to the beacon, but not with help. The Altarian Union sent a message of sympathy but said they were too far away to help. The Vegan Trade Alliance offered to buy Colorian refugees as workers, but would not fight the Zephrins. The Galactic Federation sent another formal condemnation of the invasion and did nothing else. Then, on the 13th day after the beacon was sent, something unexpected happened. A signal came from far away, from a direction where no known civilization existed. The message was short and used simple words, transmitted on an old radio frequency that most races had stopped using centuries ago. Help is coming. Prepare landing coordinates for heavy military assets. Signed, Terran Colonial Defense Force. The Colorians had never heard of Terrans. They searched their databases and found nothing. They asked the Galactic Federation about this unknown race and were told no such civilization was registered. Some council members worried they had made a terrible mistake. What if these Terrans were worse than the Zephrins? What if they were inviting a new enemy to their world? But Elder Corwin stood before the council and spoke with firm conviction. We are already dying. Our enemy comes whether we want them or not. If these Terrans mean to harm us, we are no worse off than before. If they mean to help us, they may be our salvation. We will trust in the goodness of strangers, because we have no other choice. The Colorians sent back their planetary coordinates and prepared landing sites near their capital city. They had no idea what was coming, but for the first time in months they had hope. Someone had answered their call. Someone was coming to help. High above their world, the Zephrin fleet continued its approach, confident in their victory. War leader Krex Vorthak reviewed the intelligence reports on Colorian defenses and laughed. In 3 days he would begin the bombardment of their cities. In a week, this water world would be another trophy in the Zephrin Empire. Neither side knew that. Everything was about to change. Somewhere in the dark between the stars, ships were moving. Ships unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen, crewed by beings from a world where survival meant learning to fight. The Deathworlders were coming, and they had a simple rule. Those who could not protect themselves deserved protection from those who could. 3 weeks after the mysterious message arrived, The sensors around Caloris Prime began screaming warnings. Elder Naya Corwin rushed to the orbital monitoring station, her heart beating fast with hope and fear. The technicians pointed at their screens with shaking hands. "Elder Corwin, we are detecting massive energy signatures at the system edge," said Sensor Chief Kayla Wavereader. "The readings are unlike anything in our databases. The ships are huge, larger than our cities, but they seem to absorb our sensor beams instead of reflecting them." Naya stared at the displays. 12 enormous contacts moved through space in perfect formation, followed by smaller ships that still dwarfed the largest Calorian vessels. The unknown fleet maintained complete radio silence as it approached their world. On the surface of Caloris Prime, Captain Lyra Voss stood in the emergency command center that had been built in the coral caves, beneath the capital. Around her, military officers and government officials waited for news. The Zephrin fleet was only 2 days away from their world. If these Terrans were enemies, the Calorians would face death from 2 directions. "They are not responding to our communication attempts," reported Communications Officer Dana Shoalwater. "We have tried every frequency and language in our databases. Nothing." The fleet continued its steady approach for 6 hours. Then, without warning, one of the smaller ships detached from the formation and moved toward the planet. A single vessel, but still massive by Calorian standards. It entered orbit and finally broke its silence. The voice that came through the speakers was unlike anything the Calorians had ever heard. It was deep and rough, speaking in their own language, but with strange sounds that seemed to come from a throat not meant for water. The translator worked, but the accent was alien in ways that made their scales tingle. "Calorian vessels, this is Commander Jake Morrison of the United Colonial Ship Valiant, Terran Colonial Defense Force. We received your distress call. Request permission to send a diplomatic shuttle to your capital for immediate conference. Elder?" Corwin took the communication herself. "Commander Morrison, this is Elder Naya Corwin of the Calorian High Council. Permission granted. We have prepared landing coordinates at our capital spaceport. Be advised, our world is primarily ocean. The landing areas are artificial platforms." "Understood, Elder Corwin. We will adapt. Shuttle departing now." The Calorian leadership gathered at the capital spaceport to meet their mysterious allies. The platform floated on the calm ocean, surrounded by the beautiful coral towers of their city. Children and adults pressed against the observation windows to see the aliens who had come to help them. The shuttle that descended from orbit was nothing like Calorian ships, where their vessels were smooth and curved like sea creatures. This craft was angular and brutal. It looked like it had been built for war, with thick armor and weapon ports along its hull. The metal was dark gray, almost black, and seemed to drink in the light of their sun. When the shuttle landed with a heavy thud that shook the platform, a ramp lowered with mechanical precision. The Calorians held their breath as figures emerged. From within, the first thing they noticed was how the newcomers moved. Every step was controlled, purposeful, predatory. These beings scanned their surroundings constantly, their eyes moving like hunters searching for threats. They walked upright on 2 legs, their bodies covered in some kind of uniform that looked both protective and flexible. Elder Corwin stepped forward with her diplomatic party, trying to hide her shock. These Terrans were clearly from a high-gravity world. Their muscles were dense and powerful, their bones thick and strong. But more disturbing was something in their eyes, an alertness that spoke of evolution shaped by constant danger. The lead figure removed its helmet, revealing a face that was both fascinating and frightening. The skin was pale pink, the hair a dark brown color that did not exist in nature on water worlds. But the eyes were what captured attention. They were small compared to Calorian eyes, but they held an intelligence that seemed to calculate threat levels and escape routes even during a peaceful meeting. "Elder Corwin," the figure said, offering what appeared to be a greeting gesture with one hand. "I am Captain Lisa Turner, Diplomatic Corps, Terran Colonial Defense Force. We came as soon as we received your message." Elder Corwin carefully imitated the gesture, touching the human's hand with her own webbed fingers. The contact was brief but shocking. The human skin was warm and dry, completely different from the cool, moist touch of her own people. "Captain Turner, welcome to Caloris Prime. We are grateful beyond words that you answered our call, but we must ask. We have never heard of your people. Where do you come from? Captain Turner smiled, an expression that involved showing teeth in a way that would be threatening among most species. We come from a world called Earth, about 400 light-years from here. Our colonies have been expanding in this direction for the past 2 centuries. We occasionally encounter situations like yours, where peaceful civilizations face aggressive neighbors. The diplomatic party moved to the conference chambers in the Coral Palace. As they walked, the Calorians noticed more disturbing things about their guests. The humans moved in formation, always watching different directions. They seemed to categorize everything they saw as either useful or dangerous. When a Calorian child ran past playing with friends, the humans tensed until they determined there was no threat. In the conference room, Elder Corwin presented the situation to their guests. She showed them star charts marking the destroyed colonies, tactical reports from the fleet battles, and intelligence about Zephrin capabilities. Captain Turner listened carefully, asking detailed questions about enemy weapons, ship designs, and battle tactics. The Zephrins are silicon-based life forms, Elder Corwin explained. They evolved on desert worlds with high radiation and extreme temperatures. Their technology is focused on overwhelming firepower and rapid conquest. They believe that strength is the only virtue and that weak species deserve to be enslaved. Captain Turner nodded as if she had heard similar stories before. How many ships do they typically field in a planetary assault? Our intelligence suggests they will bring approximately 150 vessels for the attack on our homeworld. Their battle doctrine emphasizes numerical superiority and concentrated firepower. The human made notes on a strange flat device. And your defensive capabilities? Elder Corwin felt shame as she answered. We have 7 ships remaining, all damaged from previous battles. Our weapons are designed for mining and construction, not combat. We are healers and builders, Captain Turner. We do not know how to fight wars. Something changed in the human's expression. The calculating look softened slightly, replaced by what might have been sympathy. Elder Corwin, every species has the right to live in peace. When that right is threatened, others have a duty to help. That is why we came. But what can you do against such numbers? We count only 12 of your large ships and perhaps 30 smaller ones. The Zephrins have more vessels, and they are experienced in conquest. Captain Turner leaned forward. Elder Corwin, there is something you should understand about humans. We evolved on what Galactic classification would call a Class 12 death world. High gravity, unstable weather, dangerous predators, frequent natural disasters. Every day of human existence has been a struggle for survival. We did not choose to become warriors, but our world gave us no other option. She activated her device, showing images that made the Calorians gasp. Pictures of Earth showed a world of incredible beauty but obvious danger. Massive storms that could destroy cities, predators with claws and teeth designed for killing, landscapes that seemed to shift and change without warning. We study war because we must, Captain Turner continued. Every human child learns strategy, tactics, and weapons handling because on our world, the unprepared do not survive to have children. We have fought wars among ourselves for thousands of years, learning every possible way that conflict can unfold. Elder Corwin felt a chill that had nothing to do with the ocean breeze. You are saying that your entire species is military? Not exactly. We have artists, scientists, teachers, farmers, and every other profession you can imagine. But every one of us understands that peace exists only when good people are willing to fight for it. We build hospitals, but we also build weapons. We write poetry, but we also write battle plans. The meeting continued for several hours as the humans gathered intelligence about Zephrin tactics and technology. Captain Turner explained that the human fleet included not just warships, but also support vessels carrying ground forces, medical teams, and reconstruction specialists. We do not come just to fight your enemies, she said. We come to ensure your civilization survives and prospers. When this is over, we would like to establish trade relations and cultural exchanges. Your healing arts and environmental sciences could benefit many worlds, including our own. As the conference ended, alarms began sounding throughout the city. The early warning sensors had detected new contacts entering the system. The Zephrin fleet had arrived early, apparently eager to begin their conquest. Captain Turner stood and spoke into a small communication device. "Morrison, this is Turner. The enemy is here. How long until our fleet is ready?" War leader Krex Vorthak stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Stone Crusher, and laughed as he watched the enemy fleet on his screens. The unknown ships that called themselves Terran were few in number and positioned strangely. They had spread out among the asteroids near the edge of the system instead of forming the tight defensive line that any sensible commander would use. "Foolish water lovers and their primitive allies," Vorthak growled to his second-in-command. "They do not even know how to fight a proper battle. We will crush them in one attack and be drinking victory wine by sunset." The Zephrin fleet moved forward in their traditional battle formation. 147 ships arranged in 3 massive wedges, designed to concentrate their firepower and overwhelm any defense. Their vessels were built like flying mountains, covered in thick crystal armor and bristling with energy weapons. They had conquered 47 worlds using these same tactics, and they had never failed. On the human flagship UCS Valiant, Commander Jake Morrison watched the enemy approach and felt a familiar calm settle over him. This was the moment he had trained for his entire life. Around him, his bridge crew worked with quiet efficiency. No one spoke unless necessary. Everyone knew their job. "Enemy fleet is maintaining standard approach vector," reported Lieutenant Sarah Wells from the sensor station. "They are grouping for a frontal assault." Morrison nodded. The Zephyrins were doing exactly what human intelligence had predicted. They relied on overwhelming force applied in the most direct way possible. It was effective against most galactic civilizations, but they had never fought humans before. "Signal the fleet," Morrison ordered. "Execute Plan Alpha. All units, weapons, free." The first surprise came when the human ships suddenly accelerated far beyond what their size should have allowed. The Zephyrins had calculated engagement ranges based on normal galactic technology, but human engines were built for the high-energy requirements of their dangerous homeworld. The Terran vessels moved like fighters despite their massive size. The second surprise was the human weapon systems. As the distance closed, the human ships opened fire with weapons the Zephyrins had never seen before. Instead of the expected energy beams, solid projectiles began hammering against Zephyrin shields, the enemy's energy barriers, designed to deflect. Laser and plasma fire offered little protection against old-fashioned bullets and missiles. War leader Vorthak stared at his tactical display in confusion. "What kind of primitives are these? They use kinetic weapons like savages from the early space age." His confusion turned to alarm as the first Zephyrin ship lost its shields under the strange bombardment. The UCS Hammer, a human destroyer, closed to point-blank range and fired something that punched completely through the enemy vessel's armor. The Zephrin ship broke apart, its crew never understanding what had killed them. But the real shock came when the human fighters launched. Zephyrins expected small craft that would engage at long range, trading shots until one side retreated. Instead, they faced human pilots who flew their ships like guided missiles, diving straight into the enemy formation with no regard for their own safety. Lieutenant Tony Garcia piloted his fighter through a storm of enemy fire, his ship's armor, taking hits that would have destroyed any other galactic fighter. His target was a Zephyrin heavy cruiser, and he intended to ram it if necessary. At the last moment, he pulled up and released his entire missile load into the enemy ship's engine section. The cruiser exploded in a ball of superheated gas, taking 2 nearby vessels with it. Fox 3, Fox 3, Garcia shouted over the radio as he pulled away from the explosion. "Splash 1 heavy cruiser." The human pilots used tactics that terrified the Zephyrins. They coordinated their attacks with impossible precision, each fighter knowing exactly where the others would be. They used their ship's superior maneuverability to get inside the enemy formation, where the large Zephyrin vessels could not bring their main guns to bear. War leader Vorthak tried to adapt, ordering his ships to tighten formation and concentrate their fire. But the humans had anticipated this response. As the Zephyrin fleet bunched together, The human destroyers moved in from multiple directions, using the asteroids as cover. Commander Morrison watched the battle unfold from his command chair, occasionally giving orders but mostly letting his captains fight their ships. This was what humans did best, adapting to changing situations faster than any enemy could respond. "Sir, the Zephrin flagship is moving to the center of their formation," reported Lieutenant Wells. "They are trying to use their other ships as shields." "Signal Captain Rodriguez on the Tiger," Morrison ordered. "Tell him it is time for the Marines to earn their pay." The Tiger was not a normal warship. It was a marine assault vessel, designed to carry boarding parties directly into enemy fleets. As it approached the Zephrin formation, it launched dozens of small pods that looked like pieces of space debris. The Zephrins ignored them, focused on the larger human ships that posed obvious threats. Lieutenant Colonel Sam Rodriguez led the first boarding party in Galactic history. His Marines wore powered armor that could survive in space and carried weapons designed for close combat. As their assault pods attached to Zephrin hulls, they used cutting torches to burn through the armor. The Zephrins had never faced boarders before. Their ships were designed to fight at long range, not to repel invaders. When humans in armor began appearing in their corridors, panic spread through the enemy fleet faster than any weapon. Sergeant Mike Collins kicked down a bulkhead door and stepped into a Zephrin command center. The silicon-based aliens were tall and angular, their crystalline bodies reflecting the emergency lights. They reached for weapons, but Collins was faster. His shotgun roared in the confined space, and the enemy crew fell like broken glass. "Command, center secured," Collins reported over the radio. "These things do not handle close combat very well." The boarding actions created chaos in the Zephrin fleet. Ships lost communication with each other as their command crews were killed or captured. Some vessels tried to ram the human pods to prevent boarders, but this only damaged their own hulls. War leader Vorthak realized his fleet was being destroyed by tactics he had never imagined. The humans fought like no civilized species should fight. They risked their lives without hesitation, coordinated their attacks with inhuman precision, and used weapons that belonged in museums. "All ships retreat to secondary positions," he ordered. "We will regroup and attack again with proper countermeasures." But the humans had no intention of letting the enemy retreat. As the Zephrin fleet tried to withdraw, the human ships pursued them relentlessly. The destroyers used their superior speed to stay inside the enemy formation, while the fighters harassed any ship that tried to break away. The battle reached its climax when Captain Amy Foster, commanding the destroyer UCS Lightning, found herself facing 3 Zephrin heavy cruisers. Her ship was badly damaged, its shields down and engines failing. The logical choice was to retreat and live to fight another day. Instead, Foster ordered all power to the engines and aimed her ship directly at the lead enemy vessel. "All hands brace for impact," she announced over the ship's communication system. "It has been an honor serving with you." The Lightning struck the Zephrin flagship just behind its command section. The collision broke both ships apart, but the explosion created a gap in the enemy formation that the other human vessels exploited. Within minutes, the surviving Zephrin ships were scattered and fleeing. War leader Vorthak died when his ship's bridge collapsed around him, crushed by debris from his own vessel. His last thought was confusion. How had primitives with obsolete weapons destroyed the pride of the Zephrin fleet? The answer was simple, though no Zephrin would ever understand. Humans had learned to fight on a world where everything was trying to kill them. They had developed tactics through thousands of years of warfare against their own species. They knew that technology alone did not win battles. Victory came from courage, coordination, and the willingness to sacrifice everything to protect what mattered. On Caloris Prime, the battle was watched by millions of Calorian civilians who had never seen real warfare before. They watched human fighters ram enemy ships, saw marine assault pods attached to alien hulls like predators attacking prey, and witnessed the systematic destruction of a fleet that had seemed invincible. Elder Naya Corwin stood in the observation deck of the Capitol building, tears flowing down her face as she watched the enemy fleet break apart. Around her, other government officials celebrated their salvation, but she felt only awe and fear. The humans had saved them, but they had also shown her what true predators looked like when they decided to hunt. As the last Zephrin ships fled, the system, Commander Morrison opened communications with the planet below. Elder Corwin, this is Morrison. The immediate threat has been neutralized. However, our intelligence suggests this was only an advance fleet. The enemy will send reinforcements when they learn of this defeat. Elder Corwin found her voice. Commander, Morrison, we cannot thank you enough for what you have done. But what will we do when they return with more ships? Morrison's reply was calm and confident. We will be ready for them. And Elder Corwin, they will not make the same mistakes twice, but neither will we. Supreme War Leader Thax Morgrim stood before the assembled War Council of the Zephrin Empire, his crystalline body reflecting the angry red light of their homeworld's twin suns. The greatest military minds of their species sat around the obsidian table, their faces showing shame and disbelief. For the first time in 3 centuries, a Zephrin fleet had been completely destroyed. Explain to me. Morgrim's voice rumbled like grinding stone. How War Leader Vorthak's fleet was eliminated by a handful of primitive ships crewed by unknown aliens. General Klex Shardfist, veteran of 27 conquest campaigns, activated the holographic display. The enemy used tactics we have never encountered. They employed kinetic weapons that penetrated our energy shields. Their small craft attacked in suicide formations. Most disturbing, they somehow boarded our vessels and fought inside our ships. Morgrim studied the tactical recordings recovered from the fleeing ships. What he saw challenged everything he understood about galactic warfare. The humans fought with a coordination that seemed impossible, as if each ship knew what all the others would do before they did it. Their willingness to sacrifice themselves for victory was beyond Zephrin comprehension. These Terrans, Morgrim said slowly, what do we know of their capabilities? Very little, Supreme War Leader. They appear to be bipedal mammals from a high-gravity world. Our surviving scouts report their ships are heavily armored and faster than anything in our fleet. Most concerning, they seem to have unlimited access to kinetic ammunition. Morgrim made his decision quickly. The Zephrin Empire's reputation was built on their image of invincibility. If word spread that they could be defeated, rebellions would break out on every conquered world. This threat had to be crushed with overwhelming force. Prepare the dreadnought. 4th Kalar for immediate deployment, he ordered. Assemble the 3rd, 7th, and 12th battle fleets. We will bring 300 ships and show these primitives what happens when they challenge the Zephrin Empire. The 4th Kalar was the pride of the Zephrin military, a ship the size of a small moon. Its crystal armor was 3 kilometers thick. Its weapons could destroy planets, and its shields had never been penetrated. Morgrim would command the fleet personally, ensuring that no mistakes were made this time. On Caloris Prime, the humans had not been idle during the 3 weeks since their first victory. Admiral Rachel Stone, who had arrived with reinforcements from Earth's 7th Fleet, walked through the temporary base that had been constructed on the ocean platform. Human engineers worked alongside Calorian scientists, sharing technology and developing new weapons. Dr. Kevin Price, the expedition's xenobiologist, made a discovery that changed everything. While studying Zephrin physiology from the captured enemies, he found that the silicon-based aliens were vulnerable to specific sound frequencies that disrupted their nervous systems. It is like finding the resonance frequency of crystal, Dr. Price explained to Admiral Stone and Elder Corwin. If we can generate the right sonic waves, we can incapacitate entire Zephrin crews without killing them. Dr. Yala Tidecrest, the brilliant Calorian scientist, worked with the human researchers to develop sonic weapons. Her knowledge of sound propagation in different environments combined with human weapons technology created devices that could be mounted on ships or carried by boarding parties. The humans think in ways we never imagined, Dr. Tidecrest told Elder Corwin privately. They see every problem as something to be solved through applied violence, but they also show genuine care for minimizing unnecessary death. They could have simply destroyed the captured Zephrins, but instead they study them to find non-lethal solutions. The human reinforcements included the legendary UCS Thunderstrike under Captain Robert Hayes, Veteran of the brutal Centauri liberation campaign, Hayes brought with him the 7th Fleet Marine Expeditionary Force, led by Colonel Patricia White, whose reputation for impossible victories was known throughout human space. Captain Hayes met with Admiral Stone and Commander Morrison to plan their defense. The humans had analyzed the first battle extensively and knew the Zephrins would adapt their tactics. "They will bring more ships this time," Hayes said, studying the tactical projections. "Probably their best equipment and most experienced commanders. They cannot afford to lose twice." Admiral Stone nodded. "Our intelligence suggests they are preparing a massive response, possibly a dreadnought-class vessel with escort fleets. We need to be ready for a much harder fight." The humans had learned much about Zephrin technology from the captured ships. Their energy shields were powerful but took time to recharge after being damaged. Their weapons were devastating at long range, but less effective in close combat. Most importantly, their crews had no experience with the chaotic close-quarters fighting that humans specialized in. Colonel White trained her Marines for a new kind of mission. If the enemy brought a super-heavy vessel, traditional tactics would not work. They would need to get inside the massive ship and destroy it from within. "Remember," she told her troops during the final briefing, "these aliens have never faced borders before. They do not know how to fight inside their own ships. Use that advantage. Move fast, hit hard, and do not give them time to adapt." The Colorians watched these preparations with growing amazement and concern. The humans approached war like engineers approaching a technical problem. Every aspect was calculated, planned, and rehearsed. They seemed to anticipate every possible scenario and have solutions ready. Elder Corwin spoke with Captain Hayes about her people's concerns. "Captain, your warriors seem so calm about facing such overwhelming odds. Are you not afraid?" Hayes smiled, the expression somehow both reassuring and predatory. "Elder Corwin, fear is a tool. It keeps us alive and makes us careful, but we do not let it control us. Every human learns early that courage is not the absence of fear, but action in spite of fear." The enemy fleet arrived exactly 3 weeks after the first battle. When the sensors detected the massive energy signatures, even the humans were impressed by the scale of the force arrayed against them. The Vorthkalar dwarfed anything in human experience, surrounded by hundreds of smaller vessels in perfect formation. Supreme War Leader Morgrim opened communications with both the human fleet and the planet below. His voice carried the arrogance of someone who had never known defeat. "Primitive Terrans and foolish Colorians, you face the might of the Zephrin Empire. Surrender now and your deaths will be quick. Resist, and we will make your suffering last for generations," Admiral Stone replied with calm professionalism. "Supreme War Leader Morgrim, this is Admiral Rachel Stone of the Terran Colonial Defense Force. We reject your terms. Withdraw from this system or face the consequences." Morgrim's laughter echoed through space. "You have 42 ships against my 300. Your primitive weapons cannot penetrate the armor of the Vorthkalar. This battle will be over in 1 hour." But the humans had no intention of fighting a traditional battle. As the Zephrin fleet advanced in their massive formation, human ships scattered throughout the system using asteroids and the planet's moons as cover. They had turned the entire star system into a battlefield. The real assault began when Colonel White's Marines launched from hidden positions throughout the system. They had been waiting in stealth pods attached to asteroids, drifting like space debris for weeks. As the enemy fleet passed through their positions, the Marines activated their pods and began boarding operations on dozens of ships simultaneously. The sonic weapons proved devastatingly effective. Sergeant Danny Clark led his team through the corridors of a Zephrin heavy cruiser, their weapons generating frequencies that dropped enemy crews where they stood. The aliens collapsed without warning, their crystalline nervous systems unable to function in the sonic field. "Command, this is Clark. Deck 7 secured. These new toys work perfectly. The hostiles just fall over like someone pulled their plug." But the real target was the massive dreadnought. Captain Hayes piloted the Thunderstrike on a suicide run toward the enemy flagship, using gravitational slingshot maneuvers around the system's gas giant to approach from an unexpected angle. The Vorthkalar's weapons could not target something so close to its hull. As the thunderstrike crashed into the dreadnought's docking bay, Hayes and his crew began fighting their way toward the ship's core systems. The corridors of the massive vessel were like cities, but the humans moved through them with deadly purpose. The battle reached its climax when Sergeant Clark and his demolitions team reached the dreadnought's power core. Using improvised explosives and human ingenuity, they triggered a cascade failure that spread through the ship's energy systems. Supreme War Leader Morgrim realized too late what was happening. As his flagship began to die around him, he sent one final message that would become legendary throughout the galaxy. What manner of devils have we awakened? The Vorth Kalar exploded like a dying star, taking half the Zephrin fleet with it. The remaining enemy ships fled in panic, carrying word of an impossible defeat back to their empire. Admiral Stone opened communications with Caloris Prime as debris from the enemy flagship rained down like burning snow. Elder Corwin, this is Stone. The threat has been neutralized. Caloris Prime is secure. News of the Vorth Kalar's destruction spread across the galaxy like wildfire. On 1,000 conquered worlds, beings who had lived under Zephrin rule for generations suddenly remembered what hope felt like. The invincible empire had been defeated twice by the same unknown species, and the impossible was becoming possible. On the mining world of Altara 7, where enslaved Calorians had been forced to dig in poisoned mud for 3 years, the overseer Grak Ironhand received the emergency transmission with disbelief. He read the message again, his crystalline fingers trembling. The Supreme War Leader was dead. The Vorth Kalar was destroyed. The Terrans were coming. Before Grak could respond, explosions echoed across the mining complex. Captain Billy Murphy had arrived with the UCS Liberator and 3 escort ships. His mission was simple: free the prisoners and eliminate the occupation forces. Within 6 hours, the Zephrin garrison was defeated, and the surviving slaves were boarding rescue ships. Similar scenes played out on dozens of worlds as human fleets responded to distress calls from across the galaxy. Commander Nancy Lewis broke the siege of the peaceful Trinari homeworld, using human fighters to punch through a Zephrin blockade that had lasted for 2 years. The bird-like Trinari wept with joy as human transports delivered food and medical supplies to their starving cities. But not everyone in the galaxy celebrated humanity's victories. In the crystal halls of the Galactic Federation headquarters, fear replaced the usual calm of diplomatic proceedings. Ambassador Helen Wright, Earth's first representative to galactic civilization, faced a council chamber filled with hostile stares. Chancellor Vex Mindweaver of the Altarian Union spoke for many when he addressed the assembly. These humans represent a clear threat to galactic stability. Their military capabilities exceed anything we have seen. Their willingness to use violence to solve problems goes against everything civilized species believe. Ambassador Wright stood calmly before the thousands of representatives. She was a veteran diplomat who had spent her career preparing for this moment. Around her, beings from hundreds of worlds whispered fears about the new power that had emerged from unknown space. Honored representatives, Wright began, her voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber. I understand your concerns. Humanity's introduction to galactic civilization has been dramatic, but let me ask you this. Where was this council when the Zephrins enslaved entire species? Where were your fleets when peaceful worlds begged for help? The chamber fell silent. The uncomfortable truth was that the Galactic Federation had watched the Zephrin expansion for decades, offering only diplomatic protests while worlds burned. Their policy of non-interference had protected them from conflict, but had failed to protect anyone else. Representative Kayla Deepvoice of the Aquarius Collective, an ally of the Calorians, rose to speak. The humans came when we called, and they asked for nothing in return except friendship. They have freed our people and helped rebuild our worlds. How can we call this a threat? But the fears were not entirely unjustified. Other human fleets had been busy across the galaxy, and their actions worried many civilizations. The humans had a simple rule: peaceful species deserved protection, and those who threatened that peace would face consequences. This doctrine was alien to a galaxy that had accepted aggression as a natural part of existence. On Caloris Prime, The partnership between humans and Colorians had grown into something unprecedented in galactic history. Dr. Yala Tidecrest worked alongside human scientists in laboratories that combined the best of both civilizations. Her breakthrough discoveries in biological restoration, enhanced by human engineering techniques, had already begun healing worlds damaged by Zephrin strip mining. Elder Naya Corwin walked through the rebuilt coral cities with Admiral Jake Morrison, who had been promoted after his victories. The human had become a close friend and advisor to the Colorian government. Children of both species played together in the warm pools, learning each other's languages and customs. "Admiral Morrison," Elder Corwin said as they watched the children, "our people have learned much from yours. Not just about warfare, but about courage and determination. You have shown us that sometimes peace must be defended with strength." Morrison nodded, watching a young Colorian girl teaching human children how to swim among the coral reefs. "And your people have shown us something we had almost forgotten, Elder Corwin, that there are civilizations worth protecting, ways of life that prove not everyone needs to be a warrior. Your healing arts have already saved thousands of human lives." The collaboration had produced remarkable results. Colorian environmental science combined with human industrial capacity was restoring damaged ecosystems across the galaxy. Human medical techniques enhanced with Colorian biological knowledge could now cure diseases that had plagued species for millennia. The partnership proved that different civilizations could achieve more together than either could alone. But the greatest change was in the galaxy's political structure. The old order, based on non-interference and acceptance of stronger species dominating weaker ones, was collapsing. Young beings across hundreds of worlds looked to humanity's example and asked why their governments did nothing while others suffered. Captain Robert Hayes, now promoted to admiral, established the first joint human-alien military academy on Caloris Prime. Young beings from dozens of species came to learn that war was not inevitable, but preparation for war was necessary to maintain peace. The Academy's motto, carved in crystal and metal above its entrance, became famous throughout the galaxy. "We study war so others may live in peace." The Zephrin Empire itself was crumbling. With their reputation for invincibility shattered, rebellions broke out on every conquered world. The remaining Zephrin fleets found themselves fighting desperate defensive actions instead of wars of conquest. Some Zephrin commanders, realizing their empire was doomed, sought peace negotiations through neutral parties. Dr. Kevin Price, working with both human and alien psychologists, made a disturbing discovery about Zephrin society. The silicon-based aliens were not naturally evil, but their harsh desert worlds had created a culture where only aggression was rewarded. Their children were taught that strength was the only virtue and that showing mercy was a sign of weakness. "They are products of their environment," Dr. Price explained to the Joint Human Colorian Council. "Just as our harsh world made us fighters, their worlds made them conquerors. But unlike us, they never learned that strength could be used to protect rather than destroy." This understanding led to an unprecedented experiment. On the world of Zephyros Minor, where young Zephrins were being raised in refugee camps after their government's collapse, human and Colorian teachers began working with alien children. The goal was to show them that cooperation could achieve more than conquest. The results were promising. Young Zephrins, given examples of species working together instead of fighting, began to question the beliefs their elders had taught them. Some even expressed interest in joining the new galactic alliance that was forming around human principles. The final scene of this chapter in galactic history took place at the memorial service for all those who had died in the wars. Representatives from every liberated world gathered on Caloris Prime to honor the fallen. Human Marines stood beside Colorian healers, Trinari pilots next to former Zephyrin slaves, all united in their commitment to a better future. Ambassador Wright delivered the main address, her words broadcast to billions of beings across the galaxy. "Today we remember those who died so that others might live free. They came from many worlds and many species, but they shared one belief, that peaceful beings have the right to exist without fear." She paused, looking out at the vast crowd of beings who had never before stood together as equals. Some have called humanity's arrival a disruption to galactic order. They are correct. We have disrupted an order based on accepting suffering as inevitable. We offer a new order based on the principle that suffering should be prevented when possible and fought when necessary. In the years that followed, the galaxy would continue to change. New alliances formed between species that had never cooperated before. Trade routes opened between worlds that had been isolated by fear. Children grew up learning that they lived in a universe where help would come when they called for it. The human fleets continued their patrols, now joined by vessels from dozens of allied species. They maintained peace not through conquest, but through the promise that aggressors would face united opposition. The galaxy had learned that sometimes, when peaceful beings begged the stars for aid, the stars would send exactly what was needed. On Earth, children learned about the day their species first heard a cry for help from across the galaxy and decided to answer it. They learned that with great power came great responsibility, and that the price of peace was eternal vigilance. The message that had started it all, the desperate plea from Caloris Prime, was preserved in the archives of 100 worlds. Future generations would read those words and remember that sometimes in the darkest hour, hope comes from the most unexpected places. The Deathworlders had come, and the galaxy would never be the same.